would just love to start with you at the very beginning. I mean, so I'm wondering, for you growing up as a child, were you aware of Marilyn even as like an icon, as an image?
Well, we actually did have some American films playing on TV all the time. I did grow up just watching, romantic comedies, Richard Gere and Tom Cruise and Julia Roberts and all of these wonderful movies. And I remember asking my mom not long ago when we premiered the movie in Venice if she remembered movies of, Marilyn on TV, and she was like, absolutely yes. They were, I guess I must have seen them, but I didn't recognize at the time that was Marilyn. So I wasn't very much aware of her until later on. Yeah.
Well, I always think, as a critic, we get frequent Marilyn biography pictures, and I always think of it as like this real challenge for an actor. It's like, this is a face that we in the audience know so well. This is a person we know so well. And what I really like about the way you choose to play Marilyn is that, like, you clearly have like wonderful makeup team, wonderful hair team, but you chose to focus, I believe, not on like any prosthetics. There's no prosthetics here, but more on like the interior spirit of Marilyn. And I'd love to hear more about that. Like, what is the inner spirit of Marilyn that you really wanted to focus on?
Well, first of all, I think it's always important to remind people that it's not a biopic. Mm-hmm. It's based on the book. Because Marilyn was not just this. She was many other things, and she was also wonderful in many other ways. This is also an interpretation of all this photographic memory that we have of her, and we're reinterpreting and giving a different meaning to all these images that we've seen throughout our entire lives, and we have a history or a story attached to those images, and we're kind of like showing a different side of that, because sadly this is also a part of what she went through and that hasn't been shown. And this is why, to your point, I was focused on not the image that we're familiar with, which is the on-screen character that we're used to see, but Norma Jean, the woman who lived through a horrible trauma during childhood and then had to go about life the best way she could. So that was, I think, my focus. I wanted to peel all those layers of this character that, of course, I had so much material to look at and do research and movies to watch and audio recordings and interviews and, the book and everything you can imagine. But who was Norma Jean? Who was her before all of that happened? Mm-hmm. And how was she feeling when that was happening? Because sometimes, especially in this industry, there are things that are happening to you that you just put in that position, and you have to keep delivering and showing up because it's what's supposed to, it's what's expected, and you don't really have time to process it, and you just keep going with it until you can't handle it anymore, and you break. So for me, the movie is not literal or chronological. It's not a biopic. But the emotional truth had to be there in order to care for this person that we haven't actually met. So that's what I was really interested in. And also just focusing on Marilyn and recreations and what we've seen, it would have been a very restrictive, thing for me to do. So I thought it was only fair that I would bring who I thought she was or was going through emotionally, and give her that chance to be a more dimensional person, not just one thing. Does that make sense?
No, it makes a ton. And I love that you're talking about this as almost like sort of playing two characters.
We all have that. We all have a private person and a public person. When you take someone like Marilyn, as an example, of course, that is magnified. There's no one bigger than her. So it is a struggle because you're on the spotlight, and that public person becomes you know, in her case, probably her armor, and at the same time her prison, because she couldn't get away from it.
Yeah, I mean, like, people who knew her in person have sort of said that when she wanted to just be Norma Jean, she could almost turn a light off and become invisible. And then when she wanted to be Marilyn, it was like she could turn a light on from within. You know, like,
I think she was pretty aware of that. I think for her, the line was pretty clear. She knew she was not Marilyn. For Norma, Marilyn was someone that she could not live up to. Like, she didn't recognize what people saw in Marilyn. She knew that that was not her. She talks about Marilyn always as a third person. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's a scene in this movie that I really love that kind of brings together so many layers and I think asks so much of you, and I would love to hear more about it, which is, you know, it's early in this film, there's an early audition scene, very early on, black and white, where you're auditioning, you know, to play the part of Nell. And
it's one of my favorite scenes in the
It's
movie.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to hear everything about it, but like you come in, you know, you're Norma Jean, you're not Marilyn to anybody in that room yet. You know, you're on the process of becoming a person who's respected, you know, hopefully by the men in the industry. And so those two things are already happening in the character. And then you're putting on this other character of Nell, this like dark, you know, woman who's not taking care of the kids in her care. And then you're also adding in, I feel like in that scene, elements of her own mother and her own experience. And this scene is just so stacked with meaning. And you playing it have to do it in this, you know, really long take where you work up to tears. I just want to hear everything about that scene, to be honest, because I think it's such a great showcase of your acting.
Thank you. You know, I watch the movie sometimes and I don't know how I did some things. I really don't. And there are moments that I really cannot explain the process because I don't think it was a conscious thing. I'm not an actor that goes to set or tells the director in advance, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it this way so everyone knows. I'm just there and it happens. And every take is different because I try different things. So I think that, you know, at some point, all of that research that we did for so long and all the work just comes out in ways that, you know, it was there inside of me and, you know, they manifest or something. But that scene is beautiful because at that point, she's still not Marilyn. I think that at the beginning also, Norma, she was ambitious. She wanted to have this career. She wanted this to happen for her. And then this character got created. And pretty soon it got out of hands. And she lost control of it. But at that point, she still doesn't really know who she is or supposed to be. And she was really nervous. She was very insecure. And she was not being taken seriously, clearly. And at the time, you know, also, like you said, she just saw her mother for the first time. And, you know, it's a very strong scene because you do see the layers of Anna playing Norma, playing Marilyn, playing a character. So it is tricky. But then when she looks to the side and all the heads turn, you feel and you can see how commanding and how magnetic she was and how good of an actress she was. And that was probably one of the first and few dramatic roles that she had the chance to play. It was a lot of fun. And then unfortunately at the end of the scene you realize that all of that was for nothing and they were just looking at her ass. Yeah.
What's fascinating, I think, if I'm hearing correctly about how you build your process, is that we, you know, people who study of Marilyn, people who see this movie know that she worked, you know, very much by like digging into like personal trauma. She was training with Strasberg to figure out how to work with her own pain from the inside. But it sounds like you're playing an actress who worked in one way when you work in a very different way yourself. Is that accurate?
Sorry, say that again.
Oh, that you don't like to work the way that Marilyn does, I'm guessing, by summoning your own pain and trauma.
I mean, I think there was so much for me to there was so much for me to do and feel and places to go in this movie. I think I definitely used a lot of the things I haven't had the chance before to use before. You know, to use of myself. And I was very surprised about it because when I thought of Marilyn at the beginning, I was like, what do I... Well, I do not have anything in common with this person. I'm Cuban, she's American, different era, different time, different, you know, upbringings, everything. But to my surprise, I actually quite understood pretty quickly her situation. So I guess I did. I don't think I am a method actor. I don't stay in character. Definitely not in this one. Because it was just really, really immersive and demanding and intense, and that kind of like, you know, getting out of it was important. But I think I did use some of my, it's all, I mean, it's all me there. I mean, it's pretty obvious that I gave all I had. There's nothing left. That was it. So yeah.
I mean, another scene I'd really love to talk about. You know, you were explaining, I think, so wonderfully how this isn't like a biographical picture, and yet we have these tiny touchstones of things we sort of know, her different marriages, and you highlight some stuff within those marriages very quickly and so simply. And the scene that really pops out for me is when you have just married DiMaggio and you're walking through his very loud house. And I had never really thought about how that marriage was for her day to day until your scene where you just show how uncomfortable she is surrounded by people who feel so free to talk. And it made me realize, I heard that one of the things that Andrew Dominic did when you were coming up with this character and how to play her is he took an emotion off the table for you that you weren't allowed to show.
Yeah.
And it was anger.
Yeah. Well, I think I do think that she's just felt, for the most part, so removed from connection. That is something that she wasn't familiar with. When you're a child and you're told that everything bad that happened was your fault, that you're not wanted, that your father left because of you, and you feel that kind of rejection, you will see life and navigate situations in a completely different way and see everything through that lens. And she spent her entire life trying to not feel rejected again, trying to get that love from people. And therefore anger or rage was not something that she could afford, because that would push people away, and that's why she had no boundaries, and that's why people kept taking and taking and taking and taking from her, and until she had nothing left. And that scene is amazing because you can see this relationship. These two people could not be more farther apart. They're like from different planets. They don't speak the same language. She really does not know how to interact in a normal, like a daily routine family life. She has no idea how to do that. And she's trying to communicate that to him as well, and he talks about baseball, or boxing, or I don't know what, like completely out of touch and intimacy. And that's what you realize, that she never was able to get that again. There was no real intimacy there. She was just needing and yearning for company, but no in depth. She could not really connect with people. Or the other way around, people could not connect with who wasn't Marilyn.
Yeah. I love that. And we're going to open it up for audience questions in just a second. But before we do, I want to ask, you touched on how this was so important to kind of trigger our memories of famous images we've seen of her. And I mean, it seems like you had more costume changes in this movie than I have seen in almost any movie. Yeah. But I'm wondering, how did that work for you inside of a scene to think like, I'm capturing this photograph? Did you also have to stay aware of, if I tilt my head this way or if I cross my legs like this,
yes.
it will remind people what this is?
Oh, yes. Andrew this is one of the, you know, this is the visual idea for the film. Andrew created this photographic Bible with the entire movie, scene by scene, in pictures and images that we've seen, you know, our entire lives. And every scene, it's a picture. So we would print the pictures, the size of the monitor, and put it next to the monitor, and we would have to start the scene or end the scene in the same position, frame, color, lens, everything as the real picture. The black and white and the color is not a random decision. Is if the picture was black and white, the scene is black and white. If the picture is color, the scene is color. So you get the audience into it, and you're making them see this familiar image that they have in the back of their mind, and just like making it feel like it becomes alive. What was the question?
Just about that, like, because I'm imagining having to know how to hold your limbs.
So
while
yes, so
acting.
we had to be like in the position of, like, for example, this picture of this moment of Bobby and myself in the window when they're reading the poem. We've seen this picture and we always think, oh, this is so beautiful, so romantic. And it's not at all like that, you know? So it was very, very specific, and Andrew was very, you know, meticulous about it, and the wardrobe, we did exact replicas of all the dresses and the makeup. You know, the makeup and hair work in this movie is so wonderful. Like, something was wrong with that, and you're off. You can't just you can't watch it anymore. You don't buy it. So I was so lucky to have these people. So, you know, everyone on the same page, everyone with the same love and respect, and so passionate for the project. And, you know, it was incredible. And doing these recreations was pretty surreal, because you've been seeing these movies your entire life, and you're there recreating 7 Year Itch or Diamonds or, you know, any of that. And it's just like mind-blowing that you're kind of like doing exactly the same. It was beautiful. It was a great part of the work that we did. Yeah, rehearsing all of that and doing the same thing.
I heard that one of her secrets to get that glow was she would wipe Vaseline on her face. I don't know if that's true.
Probably. I believe that. I think I've put Vaseline on my face at some point too. Yeah. The old tricks, they work.
We're going to go throw it out to audience questions. Who is first? Microphone. How about just you'll start here.
Yeah. In your research, did you find out where she would? Oh, sorry. In your research, did you find out where she learned? I mean, from all the reading that she did of those books, it's not mentioned in the film at all. Like Dostoevsky and all of those, where she read all of those.
If she read those books?
No, where, like, in what part of her life?
Oh, I think she loved reading, is my understanding, and she was very curious. And one of the reasons why she was insecure is because she really didn't have great education growing up, so she compensated reading a lot and getting herself dialect coaches to speak better. She used to stammer, and so she wanted to sound and be prepared at all times and know as much as she could. So I do know that she started reading very early on, and then later when she went to New York for the actor's studio and all of that. So I'm guessing she read all over.
Did you have to capture her dialect changes as she's changing, as her voice is evolving?
I mean, I didn't, you know, when you see her movies, like, you can see the different works that different dialect coaches did with her. Like, from one movie to the other one, the jump in the accent, and, you know, it's really crazy. And, you know, sometimes in one of the movies, she talks every word like that, and it's like she accentuates every word, and that was that coach that she had at the time, and then she had different, you know, but no, I had enough with focusing on just one accent.
Yeah, I saw a question right here.
Hi there. So I want to say that was one of the most human and authentic portrayals I've ever seen on the screen. Yeah, and I wanted to know.
Thank you.
how things like the awareness on mental health and Me Too informed how you played this character.
Oh my gosh, I think, this story was very, very personal to Andrew. I think childhood trauma was what drew him into, falling in love with this project. So Andrew and I talked a lot about it. And fortunately, these things, are being spoken about at this point, which she didn't have that privilege at the time, and she felt very lonely. It's I am lucky that I'm much more aware of mental health and trauma and what it is like to deal with a traumatic childhood and parents and problems like that. And it was just part of the research. But yeah, does that answer your question? Okay.
I think I have time for one more. She's very excited, and I'm sorry to send the microphone all the way back.
She can't even wait for the mic.
I'll try to be not so excited. I'm so excited about this film. Thanks. I'm so excited about this film. I thought I was gonna hate it. I'm so sorry. I was told
That's
it's
okay.
awful, it's terrible. Kind of the Marilyn thing, everybody hates her. And I had actually had my ex-husband's mom told me she was terrible and they hated her at school. And so I had these weird things in my head. But how I feel about this film is what you're talking about, that the real subject is the mental illness and being a child and not being aware of what to do when you become an adult because you're always alone all the time. And to be, like you said, to be aware of learning how to be with people and to be in a group and be part of a family. And I think that is what will get everyday people to come watch this movie. And that's what I'm really excited about. Do you feel that way too?
Thank you. I do. I do. Yes.
It's not just Marilyn Monroe.
Exactly. I think
Thank
for the most
you.
part, thank you. I think for the most part, this is a movie about, this woman, and that's why I was able to connect with her, because I have been there in many of, I can relate and I can empathize with this idea. I did not have, I had wonderful parents, but I had friends that didn't. I remember this. I know what it feels like, and I also, it's my job to imagine what it is like and to put feeling, to give that, make it real. And I think for the most part, this movie is about her, the woman that was dealing with this, and that herself, she wanted to be a mom as well, but her only reference was not good at all. So she just also struggled with that deep desire of being a mother and loving. And she was terrified of not being able to. So yeah, I think maybe the perception of the movie is that it is another film, another movie about Marilyn Monroe, but I feel like it is not at all that, and it goes way deeper and into, it's more interested in the human, than the actress.
Well, I think that is a lovely note actually to wrap up. So I want to say first, thank you, Ana, for being here. Thank you, everyone here, for coming. Please tell people to come see Blonde. Tell them to see this amazing performance.
Thank you.